Hi everyone. Today I'm here to talk to you about this little man, who's our little boy, Oliver. He's had a bit of a rough start to life. Oliver was born in November 2019. He was born 2 months premature. Since his birth, he had found, as soon as he was born, he had checks over because he was a preemie, and when he was born, they found out that he had a TOF. A TOF is where your esophagus has not formed properly, so your digestive system's all hasn't formed properly from your throat to your stomach. In his case, his esophagus came to a pouch, and then his airway, his stomach was connected to his airway. He had to go through life-threatening surgery at 1 day old. He was more like only 12 hours old, because they did it first thing in the morning after he was born. He was born at 1:10 p.m. on the Tuesday, and by 8 o'clock the next day he was going in for the surgery. He only weighed 1.6 kilos, so it was very dangerous, the surgery they were doing, because he was so tiny. After the surgery, he had to be sedated for 3 days because they had to stitch his esophagus together in his throat, in his neck, which they couldn't risk him moving and opening it up. So he was sedated for 3 days, which was the longest 3 days of our life. Watching him there, not moving, it was really hard. He then got through that. He got taken off the breathing ventilators on day 4 after surgery, post-surgery. He had a leak where they did the surgery for a couple of weeks, so his recovery was quite long. He also got 4 different kinds of bugs while in hospital, including strep and staph MRSA, just to name a couple of them. So he went through numerous antibiotics. It was really hard to see him like that because I couldn't touch him, I couldn't hold him. I wasn't able to fully hold him since birth. I couldn't do skin to skin or kangaroo care till he was just over a month old, which was really hard. My husband had to go home. We live about an hour and a half away from the hospital, so he had to go home to work. Well, I stayed up here with him, so being away from him was really hard as well, and him being away from both of us was hard on him as well. But we got through that. We spent 42 days in NICU and special care. He then got to come home for Christmas for 2 weeks, and then while at home he started having episodes where he would be coughing a lot, and then he'd start bringing up this like clear stuff. We were breastfeeding and topping up for a bottle, but no and the episodes got worse and worse over the 2 weeks we were at home. he had a checkup appointment, post-surgery checkup on the 6th of January. So we brought him to Townsville that day and told them about these episodes. And then after the episodes, he started getting crackling breathing, quite loud breathing, which I was starting to get very concerned about. When I told the surgeons that, they instantly were concerned about ammonia. So they end up admitting him into hospital for a week. He had numerous tests done to find out what was going on, and then they found out that he was aspirating when he was breathing. When he was breathing and swallowing, he would aspirate. So every time he fed, there was fluid going into his lungs, which was really hard on him. We spent about a week and a half in hospital at that time to find different ways to feed him. We tried thickening foods. We tried all sorts of things. Come to the point when we just had to put a feeding tube back in. Feeding tube was supposed to be all good, but they still wanted us to come back to get a scope test done, where they stick a camera down the esophagus and into the airways and into the lower feeding tube, to find out why he was aspirating so much. That week we were at home. Again, it got worse. Episodes started again. They weren't as bad, but they were getting more and more frequent. When he came up for the scope, we got bad news. We found out that he has a hole in his airways, and they couldn't fix it straight away. He was too little. He's still too little. So he's on special formula, prescripted formula to help him put on weight and get bigger. Which he's a little over 3.5 months now, about nearly 15 weeks old, and he's about 4 kilos now. So we're getting there. We spent 2 weeks in hospital after his scope procedure. He didn't do very good with the anaesthetic, so that was another thing they were worried about, him being so little. So he spent 2 weeks in the hospital that time because he ended up getting ammonia. On top of the ammonia, he also got the rhinovirus. So it took him quite a while to get over that. He still gets a bit snuffly now, and he's still at risk of getting fluid in his lungs. So we had an appointment with the surgeons again. So you can hear that crackling right now. So we had a doctor's appointment a couple of days ago, and they've told us that they need to do something about the hole in his airways now, but they don't really want to open him up and do a major surgery on him right now because he's still so little, and they're not sure how well he'll handle that. So they are going in next week to do a procedure, a surgery where they go in through the esophagus and glue the hole. It's only a temporary fix. It's not something that's going to last long term. They're only doing that to try to stop fluid going in there for now until he gets big enough to be able to have major surgery done again to go in and repair it properly. They just don't want to do that yet. It's too risky to do it right now. So that's where we're at the moment. He is going to be in and out of doctor's appointments for quite a few years. He has to keep this feeding tube in. This is a GN tube that he's got in at the moment that actually passes by the stomach into the intestines, because he kept throwing up his feeds. Even though they were going through the tube, he kept throwing up and refluxing, and every time he did that, it was going into his lungs through that hole. So he will keep the GN tube in until he has the major surgery, or until they deem it safe enough to take out. I currently have to get everything prescripted and sent to our house. We need everything from syringes to bottles to tubes to formula to medications. There's a lot of stuff that he needs. So yeah, so this is Oliver. He's our little man. He's so adorable. He's such a strong little boy and a fighter. So that's why we have Oliver's Fight Fun, to help Oliver fight the TOF. Thank you for listening. Bye.